Do I say your name right? You didn't correct me, so I'm guessing I do. Aleph,
Yes, perfect. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Is that your full name or is that short for something?
yeah. It's a nickname actually.
What's your real
Yeah.
name?
Olatomiwa.
Olato?
Olatomiwa.
Olatomiwa.
Yeah, 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 yes. Yeah,
So
yeah,
why
yeah.
Aleph? It's completely different.
Yeah, so yeah, I just like it honestly. So
Okay.
it's a concept from maths. And then like I was in college, I was reading about something. I was like, oh, that sounds nice to call myself. And then
Really?
that's how it started. Yeah. So since college, people have been calling me Aleph.
All your friends and family?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, yeah. When my sister wants to ask me for a favor, because she calls me both, but when she wants to ask me for a favor, she calls me Aleph. She's like, Aleph.
She knows you like it better.
Yeah.
That is so funny.
Yeah, so.
So what did you study in school?
So I studied computer science. So I went to a small school in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh,
It's
wow.
called
Why
FIS.
Nashville?
Honestly, because I got a scholarship.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So I was a math nerd in high school. So I did like the math Olympiad, and I had like a silver medal. So after that, I was like, oh, what do I want to study? So initially, I was thinking of studying physics. And I was going to school in Fisk University. And then in my first semester, I had a bunch of friends. They were taking computer science classes and they were teaching them binary and like logic, and like it was appealing to me. So I started doing like all the assignments on the side and like auditing the class. And then at the end of the semester, I walk up to the professor and I'm like, if I do well on the final exam, will you let me take computer science too? Like, sure.
Okay.
And that's how I became a computer science major, because I did well on the final. So I actually did not take computer science one at all. I skipped to computer science two in the spring semester. And that's how my journey into the world of computer science started.
Nice.
Yeah, one of the best decisions of my life.
Really?
Yes.
No regrets
absolutely.
there.
No regrets at all.
Did you just enjoy the concept of computer science and logic, or was there something you wanted to do that would require for you to study computer science?
Initially, no. So I think I just was a big fan of computers. So technically I got on the internet relatively late, right? So again, my first exposure to the internet was, I guess, my junior year of high school. So I was preparing for the Olympiads, and then like I'll go to, so in Nigeria you have these things called cyber cafes where you go, you rent like the internet for 1 hour. So I would go there and I would see like math questions and previous Olympiad questions, and I would go online and be learning. And then based off that, so when I ended up winning the Olympiad, I got gifted a computer by the state government. Yes, and then I was like, oh wow, there's a whole world out there. And so I started like digging in more and more. And so when I was at Fisk, when I started college, it just became so much more like natural. And so like all of the logic and everything was appealing. Because initially also, the initial parts of computer science feel a bit like maths, right? So I really like that. And then when I double clicked into computer science, then, so I think this is one of the really like nice things about computers. You get this like instant gratification, right? Because you can build a website and you can build a mobile
It's
app
instant.
and like all of these different things. It feels really real. So it got me super excited.
So you and Avery, the CEO of Aptos, have that in common. He also was doing math competitions in his college years, and probably before that, his youth actually also.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, my grand dream is to sponsor really like big Olympiad competitions in Nigeria and like really encourage like all of the energy around.
I mean,
maths
Daya
and
seems
science.
pretty well positioned to make that happen.
Yes, yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Yes, we are most likely going to do that. Yes. Yeah.
That's so
because there's also like all of this like pipeline to. I do think with like very strong like math, science, engineering, education, people can still do all sorts of things, right? So you can do obviously like the more traditional things. You can do research. You can end up doing even stuff like growth and analytics and social science research, right? And understanding users, right? And like understanding meaning in the world around us. So I think like all of those things are going to be super interesting for us to, we do a lot of investment in like our people, right? So like employees, training, and like this is inevitable in the nature of crypto, right? Because crypto is relatively like niche, right? And you need, It's like everyone who starts working in crypto doesn't know anything about crypto, right? And so you
don't have a degree for
yes,
crypto, like
yeah, exactly,
official courses or
yeah,
anything.
yeah. Like the most experience anyone has in crypto is what? 15 years experience if you are Satoshi or something.
Yeah,
like 17
basically.
years. Yeah. So yeah, we end up like investing like a lot in like, oh, how do you learn? Like, are you a fast learner, right? Are you very curious about the world, right? Like this literally are the traits we look for in people. And so I think just really having like a culture of people who are like super curious and engaging and excited and like learning is what you want.
It is. We're gonna get into that more, but let's talk about Daya for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few things that I want to touch on. I think let's start with talking about Daya.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the upcoming announcements that you have,
Mm-hmm.
the upcoming, I mean, technically it is partnership, but upcoming partnership because it's not really public yet.
Yes.
And then let's go into your experience building the product and the things that you've done before because I want to say I'm going to use the word validated founder through things like third-party programs that a lot of founders strive for. You got into a couple of them.
Yeah.
So okay, let's start with Daya first. I don't know how aware people are of Daya's stage right now. You guys got popular, I want to say, through the finals of Alliance DAO. So you are building the payments rails for Africa.
Yes.
Right? What does that mean? Why is it needed?
So we think of it as building a stablecoin neobank for Africa, right? And I think the thing to think about first is what's the problem, right? And the problem is that a lot of Africans, both businesses and individuals, are disconnected from the global financial infrastructure. What this means is if you want to send money across borders, it's very expensive, right? It can cost as much as 10%. It can take as long as like 3 to 5 business days, sometimes longer. And you can't track it, right? And I sort of liken the experience of sending money today, right, to kind of using something like USPS, right? So you go to USPS, you want to send like a letter mail. Well, imagine like the KYC deal also or something. You stand in line for quite a while. It's very inefficient. You pay a ridiculous amount in fees. And then like it just like takes forever. Sometimes you don't have tracking. Sometimes they misplace your packages. And like what we're building with Daya, right, like on stablecoin rails, is a lot more like we're building email, right? So we want you to send money and for it to be instant, right? And so things say like if you're an African business, instead of all of this like really horrendous user experience and like really like painful thing that you've been doing in the past, what you're able to do with Daya is say, I have from the comfort of my home, I download an app, I go through like the KYC compliance process, and I can send money anywhere in the world, like it's tracked. People receive it same business day. I can receive money from anywhere in the world, right? And like I get it like same business day. And what this ends up meaning is businesses are like a lot more efficient. We have a startup, they're like a design studio in Nigeria, like they're one of our first customers. And like what they have with us right now is they just have like a virtual account, right? So what this means is they can receive USD from anywhere in the world. And this means they can actually just literally use us for all of their banking rails, right? So they don't actually need to have a local Nigerian bank account. They receive funds from like all of their investors, both in local fiat and like internationally, and like they can do payouts, right? And like this is also money that is protected from inflation. We're issuing them virtual cards very soon, right? So like they're also going to be able to spend that online. So I think this is an incredibly like transformative thing for like the businesses, the individuals, everyone kind of like using us because they're going from say paying a lot of money in fees, waiting for really long delays to something that feels a lot more like an email style experience.
I feel like I hear a lot people building rails for Africa, neobanks in Africa. Something that and maybe this is a dumb question on my end, but Africa being a very, very big continent, you guys are the first customer, I want to say, is Nigeria, right? That's your home. I know that you're pretty established in the South African market, also Ghana, Kenya upcoming. What does that mean? Like, what's the ease of building rails for Africa specifically? Like, how many countries can you actually access and how many countries are you actually targeting there?
I think there are two aspects to that question, right? So the first is if you're a Nigerian business, right, or a Nigerian individual, you can access the entire world, right? So this we sort of like think of as solving the problem for like a Nigerian business. And then the second aspect of your question, which is, well, how realistic is it for us to support every country in Africa, right? So there are like 52, 54 countries, like thereabout. So one, we think the right approach is to kind of have these regional hubs where we build out most of the experience there, right? So say, like in West Africa as an example, we would do that in Nigeria, Ghana. In East Africa, we do that in Kenya. In South Africa, we do that. Southern Africa, we do that with South Africa. And as you kind of, and like one, these are like the biggest, more dominant markets in like each of those regions. And like as you then do that, you can then like grow into like the other countries that are in that region. In some scenarios, right, we might not even have to like do that. We might be able to do some more on the ground like partnerships, right? Like we might be able to say, oh, like you're a Rwandan company and you can still open an account as if you're like a Kenyan company because some of the regulation and policies like enable trade a bit more. So this is kind of how we think about it, where like the first step is just strengthening those regional hubs such that, because like they're the largest market, they're really dominant, they give us the brand, they help us understand the space, right? And as we do that, we then figure out like based off the region what the right approach is, right? Do we kind of fan out to all the different countries in that region, or is what we want to do to figure out say like more local partnerships or like more last mile partnerships, and like people kind of like building on top of our infrastructure.
So you're basically using almost sub-regions, right? So if it's for South, the South, you're going with the biggest country hub there. Same for the West.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Interesting. Why do you think there's so much? I want to say most of the innovation out of Africa is coming from Nigeria. Why is that?
There are a bunch of reasons, right? So I think one obviously is like the population, right? Two is the size of the economy. So like one in 5 Africans is like Nigerian, right? So you end up just having like this very strong like dominance and things like that. I think we also just really experience the pain a lot, right? Like Nigerians are very entrepreneurial, right? So it's like I grew up and a lot of like my neighbors were like running like small businesses on our street as an example, right? So this is a very dominant preoccupation of people. So this ends up meaning sending money across regions is like super important for them, right? Because like they're entrepreneurial, they're like very high agency, right? So it means they really want to take charge of like their finances and figure out all of these things, right? So like there are all these like traits that make it such that the problem is very acute and like painful for people and like very real, right? And
very tangible.
Yes, exactly, right. And I think like there are just like a lot of people who also invest themselves in trying to solve this problem, right? And like just figuring out like, okay, like, so yeah, you then have like the other side of it where, again, because you have like this entrepreneurial like nexus, all of the innovation like on the tech side and the finance side and the crypto side and all of those things end up being very strong in Nigeria also.
Would you say that Nigeria is the China of Africa, the same way China is, arguably the biggest hub in Asia?
Yeah, so I was actually going to use that analogy. I just wasn't sure if I would get in trouble, but yes.
Why?
Yes.
Why would you?
I actually don't know if I'll get in trouble. I probably won't, yeah. but yes, I would actually like absolutely like describe it that way, yeah. I think like there are these, I think maybe perhaps like the most impressive thing also about like Nigerians is just the very strong like work ethic and just like persistence, like with like tackling problems. And I think like we see that with like the talent we have in the company also, right? You get to have like very like super curious people and very like talented people are like persistent about solving problems. So, and like that's how we build important, great things.
That's good to know. Yeah, I've always felt like Nigeria is comparable to China in that sense.
Yeah.
In terms of speed of growth,
yeah,
and the type of mindset that comes out of it, and then the types of product that you see coming out of it, like all of these things.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, precisely.
So I feel like neobanks has been a hot topic. The same way stablecoins have been a hot topic for at least the last year and a half, I want to say, in the crypto world. What is it do you feel like gives Daya a competitive edge? What's making you guys the winners, I want to say?
Yeah, so I think today like the biggest thing that we have is our sort of like what we describe as our smart routing engine. which is just incredibly strong, resilient, good, like on-ramp, off-ramp rails, right? So I think for a lot of people, they kind of try to build out liquidity like in-house, and it's via P2P, and like it's super manual and like all of these different things, right? And you end up in a situation where like liquidity is fragmented and whatnot. And like the approach we've taken is try to figure out how do we build out the on-ramp experience such that it is essentially zero fees, right? And everyone can kind of like trust us that when they come to us, like they get the best rates, right? And I think there are three things people kind of like think about like with this like on-ramp experience. One is like the rate, two is liquidity, and three is reliability, right? And it's very easy to like for you to go somewhere and they have good rates, but they have low reliability, right? Yeah. Or they have low liquidity, right? And today, it's interesting, right? Something I was going to flag is when people start using stablecoins today, you almost need to have like your own mini treasury team, right? And like what that means is your treasury team goes and they go check rates from other people. They think about like the modeling of reliability and like all these different things. And like that's painful. That's not scalable. That's not their core competence. And so like what we've done is like we've plugged into like all these different like rails and providers, P2P networks, regulated exchanges to build like very robust and resilient like liquidity and like on-ramp, off-ramp. And like this is a thing we're just able to like surface out to like the users. So I think like this is kind of the really like first thing that is the strong edge for us, right? Where like we have the most resilient and like stable rails in that regard. And then like, okay, businesses can kind of like build on top of that. And then like the second thing is just solving this problem end to end. I think, again, today you still have a situation where like a lot of these things are super fragmented, right? Where you go somewhere for like the on-ramp, you go somewhere for the APIs.
It's so bad.
Yeah, exactly. You go somewhere if you're like an individual, you go somewhere if you're a business, you go somewhere else. If you want to send to like China and Asia, you go somewhere if you want to go send to the US, right? Again, this doesn't make sense, right? When people should be able to like go to one place that is the one-stop shop that like aggregates everything. And in that sense, we think of our responsibility there as connecting Africans to the global financial infrastructure, right? Where every single thing you want to do as a financially connected citizen, as an African, you should be able to do with Daya, right? And like that's what we're building. So I think that's sort of like the unique edge that we have in that regard. And like a lot of that is also like technology driven, right? Because we're able to just really like lean into like our people and like the technology that we've really built to make sure like all of this really, really works.
What I've seen also across different financial super app, almost I want to call it, we call it a neobank, but to me it's more financial super app because as you mentioned, there's everything in one. You don't have to exit, you don't have to off-ramp and on-ramp somewhere else. What I've seen, you talked about reliability, what I've seen to be very important for the success of these types of products is the partnerships that you have.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
One of the partnerships I'm really excited about, right, is like our partnership with like HashKey and Aptos actually, right? And I think one of the really important corridors is the Nigerian/Africa to like Asia, Middle East corridor. And like working together with HashKey has been super important, right? Because we think we're building out like this like really custom solution that like solves everything, right? So like we end up having, say, like African businesses who are able to come to us, right? And like they do like their own ramp, they give us their local fiat, right? And in partnership with HashKey, anywhere sort of in the Middle East, Asian region, we're able to like do these payments. And like we also have like businesses, right, that want to do the same thing, right? And like they're able to like go to HashKey, right? And like integrating with us, they're able to just end up like doing like local African payouts. So I think like this strength has been like super important, right? And like we're building like all of this like in partnership with Aptos, right? And like there's just like a lot of super positive things that like we've realized there. So one is obviously we have like all of these businesses that are very fee sensitive and like want very good uptime with like the blockchain rails and all of these different things. And like I think like Aptos is a super good partner for us like in that regard. And I think another thing also has just been like the really strong leaning into like stable coins and understanding that this solves like a unique problem for like everyday Africans and for businesses, right? And like that's another thing that like we really like thought about in like figuring out like who is the right partner for us to build this with. So I think this is going to be a super like transformative thing for like a lot of businesses. I think like down the line, many years down the line, we're going to think this is like one of the pivotal seminal moments where figuring out trade across like the two continents just got like a lot better. So I'm excited for that, yeah.
Great, we're excited to have you. It's funny because I've known of this for a while.
Yes.
But I feel like many people don't know yet.
Yes,
so
yes.
They will very soon.
Yeah, we can finally let the cat out of the bag.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think HashKey is a very important recent partner of yours. The way I think of it, but correct me if I'm wrong, is it kind of gives, it's almost saving you guys as Daya years of development, right? Because I think the hardest part in what you're building a product like yours isn't building the tech really. It's more getting the licenses to all the different jurisdictions that you want to be able to interact with. And so a partner like HashKey is giving you a shortcut to that essentially. It's almost like plugging an API that gives you access to a lot of the Asian market and MENA. What is that going to unlock for businesses, based out of Africa who want to have this interaction more globally?
So yes, like if you're even like for a business like Daya, right, like with like all of the licenses we have and like the funding and whatnot, right? Figuring out like breaking into like these new markets is still very, very difficult, right? We have to figure out like what the regulation looks like, what banking looks like, what the nuance of the system looks like, what treasury even looks like, right? Like liquidity management, like I mentioned earlier. And being able to like figure out like the right partner that can move really fast because we're a startup, right? But it's also like super compliant, right? And like we can trust and like build out this, which is like very, very critical, right? Yeah. And I think like HashKey has done like a very good job of that, right? Where they have very strong rails, like very good like banking relationships, right? And like they just have like a very compliant process that we're able to like plug into like and integrate. And so like kind of in that regard, we are getting to save like just a lot of like pain, right, just to be able to like access this. And kind of like vice versa also, right, because they don't have to worry a lot about figuring out like the local market and the nuances and the banking system and what people like and like what uptime is like and reliability, right? We have all of that like local nuance contextual experience in sub-Saharan Africa. And so like it is a marriage of like two parties where all you get is like a lot of like net positive. And like for our users, right, again, like the experience today, right, is incredibly painful, right? So if you were trying to say get money to like pay somebody like in Asia as an example, right, or like the Middle East, like, right, like this is a thing that probably takes like several hours over the course of a day. Then you go to the bank physically, like you deposit the funds, the bank might flag something, right, or they might say, oh, like we don't send to China like today, right? Or like we don't send to like this part of the world. If they end up like using a bank that does that, like it's the corresponding banking system. And like one of the reasons we really got to think about this and invest a lot in this is we have just like a ton of businesses that have been like asking us for these rails, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and like there's like one of these like businesses, like they're like a automotive like importer, right? So like they import cars from like China and like some other parts of like Asia, and like they've really like been on like our neck for like saying, oh, like I mean, you really like solve this problem for us with respect to say Nigeria and the US, right? How can you like kind of like make this also possible for like this other market that is big for us, right? So like we really went like digging, right, and like solving, and like even like as we've built this out, we've really spent a lot of time like talking to that user to ensure like this like solves the problem for them. And so like we feel very confident that like what we're building out and like what we're going to have out for like people to use very soon is going to be very, very good for like these businesses. And so like it's going to save them time, right? And it's going to cut down fees and it's going to give them a lot more like reliability. And again, like these things are like very important for businesses. It means there's more turnover, there's more revenue, like business activities going. It's very, very good for the country, right? And like it's super good for the continent. So we're excited about that.
That's great. Yeah, it's good to hear. I mean, I'm guessing the most important rails to have was in between Africa and Asia, right?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Something that I find interesting, and I'm sure you're going to be able to shed a lot of light on this, is at the end of the day, a product like Daya is really making the banking system and the banking experience obsolete is not the word, but you're improving it, right?
Yes.
But on the other end, it's also really important for you guys to have good relationship and partnerships with local banks. So how does this relationship work? Is it mostly for the off and on ramp that you need to have these relationships? And do they see, partners like you as partners, or is it a little bit more like competition in a way? How does that look like? How's the relationship with banks?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, right? There are multiple aspects of that, I think. So first is, yes, absolutely. What we've really like worked with the banks and even like the traditional fintechs around has been like the on-ramps, off-ramps, right? Just very, very good reliability, right? And this might not even be very obvious about like the Nigerian market and like a lot of African countries, but bank transfers are incredibly reliable and like very good, yes, right? So just, but ensuring like, okay, we figure out like all of the best ways for like routing that. So we match up to like the expectation of the users has been like a lot of like the investment there. And then like, next question is like, oh, well, like how do banks kind of like think about this space like long term and things like that? I think the analogy there is very similar to like how you think about it in the US, right? Where on the one hand, right, like there's a circle that exists as an example, right? But in a sense, it's very like net positive with say the fact that, oh, like they have to keep like bank with like a whole bunch of like different banks, right? And like they still need to do payouts, right? And they need to like figure out like all of these different things. And in a sense, the growth of like the stablecoin space is like a demonstration for like the banks to like be pushed and like to pursue like innovation and all of these different things. So I think kind of like bringing that back home in Nigeria, there ends up being two things that we see, right? One is by demonstrating like the stablecoin space and stablecoin infrastructure, it kind of like nudges the banks to figure out like, okay, like this is actually a very valid thing that like solves real user problems. But then also like the way we think of like positioning ourselves is such that the banks can build in tandem with us, right? Or like on top of our rails, right? And there are all these like different nuances of building with stablecoins and with crypto that the banks are probably not super interested in figuring out, right? So obviously they have a lot of the distribution with like the users and whatnot and like some of the brand. But then like they can say, oh, well, we want to make it such that it is easier to on-ramp like natively. We want to make it such that people can buy Bitcoin in the app, people can buy stocks in the app, right? All of these different kinds of things are stuff like they can rely on like Daya for. And like we've had like some of these like early indications like with the banks where we've also seen some signal that they're interested. And like what we've seen also has just been that because regulation is getting a lot better, right? Like this has also made them more likely to like want to like work in this space. And so I kind of expect like what we would have is over the next say 18, 24 months or thereabout, you would end up starting to see first the traditional fintechs kind of embracing stablecoins a lot more, embracing crypto a lot more, embracing tokenized stocks a lot more. And then like what you end up seeing is shortly after that, like the banks also like following suit, right? And I think something that we've really like seen in Nigeria has just been like the regulators have been very like progressive like in this regard, right? They've really spent a lot of time like trying to like write out what it makes sense to do, right? And just like align the space to like grow and like flourish and whatnot. And I think like you also again see something very similar in the US, right? So I think we're just like literally at the nexus of just saying, oh, like Africa is going to be truly connected to the global financial system. And I think this is absolutely, absolutely a net positive for like everywhere.
So outside of Asia, what is the second most important rail for, I'm saying African businesses because I feel like they benefit the most more than retail users when it comes to international money movements, really, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, right? I won't say it's super clear, right? Because they benefit in different ways. So obviously, so in a place like Nigeria, right, small, medium enterprises are the lifeblood of the economy, right? So in that regard, they really like benefit a lot from positive economic activity. But then again, on the other hand, it's like a lot of the small businesses are like just 1 to 3 person teams, right? Or like somebody and like their wife or their husband like running something together and whatnot, right? And so what you end up realizing that is that in that case, it is actually like very beneficial for individuals, even in scenarios where like businesses like benefit. On the other hand, also is like there are a bunch of other ways in which individuals want to connect to the global financial system. So it's like protection against inflation, like yield earning, tokenized stocks, investments, right? Which is also still very cross-border, right? But it's not cross-border in the sense of remittances, right? Or like the kinds of things we generally like talk about historically. So I think like the benefits are like relatively different, but they are still like super strong, right? Like for both parts, yeah.
That's true. Yeah, it's very different use case at the end of the day.
Yes.
They benefit most from something different. That makes sense actually. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Daya is pretty recent.
Yes.
2025. You guys are what, 8 months old?
Yes, about that.
I mean, you went live about 5 months ago.
Yes, exactly.
But you've been more publicly building since? I mean, Alliance was last summer, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we got done with demo day in October, about October 2025.
Yeah, demo day was there, and so I think you started programming July?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So you're less than a year old.
Yes.
You're, again, what I was saying earlier, a pretty validated founder. What is it that made you come to the idea of we need to build a product like Daya?
So this was actually like 2014, right?
Oh wow, that's so long ago.
Yeah, that was so long ago. Yes.
Wow.
So I first got exposed to like Bitcoin. And like what happened then was I was trying to like send money. Like I was working at Microsoft in Seattle, and I was trying to send money back home, like for family support and like some investments.
What were you doing at Microsoft?
I was a software engineer. So
Okay.
I worked on like the HoloLens team and the Azure team. So these were like these were like still very early technologies.
Yeah.
I like to jump on the technologies very
Yeah,
early.
clearly, I can tell.
So then I was trying to like send money back home, and like I decided to like experiment with Bitcoin. So I bought like some Bitcoin on like a P2P exchange. It was local Bitcoins then. It took a couple of hours. I found someone in Nigeria to like sell it to on like local Bitcoins also. And like I got money like in Naira. So it took like several hours over the course of the day. But that was still incredibly much better than like every time I had done that like in the past, right? Because in the past, I would go to like Western Union, I would go to the bank, I'll fill a bunch of forms, right? I'll say, oh, like, yes, absolutely, it is my family and I know them, I'm sending them money. And it would like take several days, and like the fees were like just like insane then also. And so I was like, oh, wow, like this is the future, like using Bitcoin to like send money across borders is kind of like the way to go. And I thought, oh, like this is going to be a solved problem by tomorrow. And so kind of like 2018, I quit my job at Microsoft, and I decided I was going to start like building like in crypto like full time. Like that led me into like working at Circle, where like USDC. And then early last year, right, like I was back in Nigeria, and like I was just like talking to different businesses, and I realized like the pain was just incredibly like massive, right? Where kind of like the gap between where my experience in like 2014 and like where things were was still really like
as present.
Yeah, as present, yes. And I think a big part of like this, right, has just been that the infrastructure has not like grown as fast. Like regulation has been sort of like a little slow, like the technology, like people's understanding, things like that. So just spent like a lot of time like talking to users, understanding their pain points. These are like a lot of like connections that I knew with like people like over the years. And so I was talking to like PJ, who went to be my co-founder. I'm like, oh, like I'm thinking about doing this, right? And he's like, oh, wow, like me too, right? I have like a lot of like validation for this problem. And for us, like the time was right, because like infrastructure was getting like a lot better. Stablecoins were beginning to seem very like normal. We think we had like a lot of experience and like a lot of things to like bring into the space. And we're like, okay, like let's kind of like give this a shot. And so we applied to like Alliance, right? And like a few months down the line, like we come to New York, and like we start building it out, like, and it's PJ and I building out the first version.
You applied to Alliance?
Yes.
And YC?
Yes.
For Daya?
Well, so I did YC for like my previous startup actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was?
Early career.
What was that doing?
So we're kind of building the Coinbase for Africa, right? So this was actually like that 2018 when I left my job at Microsoft. So we were figuring out like, oh well, so we spent a lot of time just doing user education, right? And like helping people understand like what Bitcoin is and like all these different things. But like regulation was still like way behind then. Figuring out like even the banking system and like plugging into like the banking rails was like very, very like broken then. I think even then like Coinbase was finding it very difficult to like get banks, right? So like then I sort of say we're like super early like figuring that out then. But I still think like this was one of like the seminal things for figuring out like, oh well, how can you be like an African business or like an African individual and have a sense of like how crypto is like valuable for you, right? And so I kind of like took a step back from that for a while. I ended up like going to work at Circle, and then Daya became like iteration 2.0.
The concept is not so different with Daya.
Oh yes, yeah. So I do think, so there's kind of like a bit of like nuance there, right? So one is, there's sort of like one thing with saying, well, because then I think we really focused on just being like an on-ramp, off-ramp, Coinbase for Africa, just like, oh, well, how can you buy Bitcoin? How can you buy Litecoin? How can you buy Ethereum?
More exchange.
Yes, more exchange oriented, yes. And I think like, the focus is maybe starting also from the problem, right? It's a lot clearer to us that like users don't want to even know what stablecoins are, right? Like literally they don't want to even see USDC, USDT, just want to see it as a USD balance. So kind of like going to the grounder layer, right, of saying like, okay, what's the specific pain point and like how can we orchestrate the entire solution around this?
Yeah.
Right. And like
that
in that sense, like there's kind of like a reframing of like the mentality of what we are achieving.
As opposed to trying to bring a brand new product to market and explain to users why they should want it, you're like, what do people actually need right now?
So if you kind of think about it, if you build like a Coinbase for Africa, right, like the person still needs to figure out, okay, after I have my Bitcoin, do I hold it custodially or like non-custodially? How do I exchange it for like USD? How do I get it to like somebody in China? Like there's still like a whole bunch of like things like you have to think about. And like this was like the thing I was saying earlier also, even with stablecoins today, where you have these businesses that are starting to use stablecoins who end up needing to build out their own treasury teams, right? And again, like your treasury team, maybe your most of your experience is like in the banking system. Now you need to understand like what USDC is, what USDT is, like what the different chains are, like all of these different like nuances. Yeah, exactly. And like even for like, I have like people who are friends who study computer science who don't want to even like play around with crypto because of like this, right?
Of course.
Yeah, and so like the right thing to do there is completely abstract all of these different things, right? Make it such that, again, like when you use WhatsApp, you don't know what TCP/IP is, right? Like you don't know what all these different like
I always talk about that.
Exactly.
People don't care to know how it works as long as it works, as long as they can trust it, really.
Yes, exactly, precisely, yeah. So our job is to figure out like the trust, the reliability, and the ease of user experience, right? I kind of like make this point. So the median age in Nigeria and across Africa actually is 18, right? So what you end up having is you have this entire generation of people, like half of the country, that grew up on like Encarta and like Wikipedia and like WhatsApp and like social media. And they're very like internet native, right? Like they're very smartphone first, right? And these things like connected them to the rest of the world with respect to information, right? So like we're like just, but then like they're still not connected to the rest of the world in terms of like our finances. Yes. And like this is kind of like table stakes. This is what people expect, right? When I send an email from somewhere in Lagos, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you get it instantaneously. And like this is what like banking has to be. This is what moving money has to feel like. This is what buying stocks has to feel like, prediction markets, buying crypto, all of these different things, right? And stablecoins is sort of like the starting point, the nexus for us to be able to build this. And like we're like just super well positioned to say, oh, we understand this problem. We have all of the right partners to work with. We have very good like regulatory compliance rules. And like we're just going to build like a killer product that makes people super excited.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think you're well positioned.
Thank you.
So you got into Y Combinator with your first company in crypto.
Yeah.
And you guys got into both YC and Alliance DAO.
Yes.
But because I guess and also I actually had this conversation with PJ, but YC is, I think, like a blue chip accelerator. But Alliance is kind of similar, but for crypto specifically. Is that why you ended up going with Alliance instead of YC?
Yes, absolutely right. So I do think that the Alliance, like there's sort of like an experience of the Alliance where like everyone is sort of working like on a similar problem, right? And like it's like you really both understand like what's going on. People can give you very targeted feedback, right? There were even like things we're building around like neobanking and whatnot that we were talking to people like, oh, I'm building neobanking for say Eastern Europe, right? Or like Latin America or things along those lines, right? And that ends up meaning that we can learn from like their mistakes, we can learn from like their strategies, things like this, right? So I think this ended up being like super valuable for us, right? And like Alliance is also like a much smaller cohort. So in like thinking through it, we're like, okay, yes, like what we want to do is like apply for Alliance and like get into Alliance and do Alliance. And like that's just been like very, very good for us also. I think a lot of like the early product vision and like thinking through like what it is that we want to build, how do we like hyper focus and laser focus and like refine our intuition was like super useful there. I think that obviously like in combination with like user feedback and like spending a lot of time with users. But I think like definitely like one of the best decisions we've made for Daya.
Which one is best, YC or Alliance?
Listen,
most people can't get in either, and you got into both. Yeah. So I think it's your duty to talk about the experience.
Yeah. So I think it ends up being very much somewhat of like a preference or like the kind of thing like you're working on, right? I mean, I think like if you're kind of building stuff in like stablecoins, crypto, prediction markets, all of these different things, you absolutely want to be with Alliance. There's a lot of like, and like, I mean, I think the founder support is like very good. I think even the mentors are like is super good. Like in prepping for like demo day, we do like a gazillion and one takes to ensure like it's very nice. So I think like those, and like again, like this was just very much like how we made our decision there. Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, and I think one of the things I really push for, like when I see African founders who are like building in crypto or stablecoins, I'm like, go apply to Alliance. And they're like, oh, I don't have like revenue, I don't have this. But I'm like, absolutely apply still. And for me, I think there are a couple of things there. One is, even like going through like the application, you get to like reflect and like think about like your product more. And like get really like critical, like you're forced to like face the reality of like what you're doing. And like if you do end up like getting in, right, it's just like remarkable, right? And I also do think like there are all these like nuances of like the local market and local context where Alliance is a very good bridge for being able to like share that with say like US based like crypto investors and partners and anyone else like you might want to work with, right? So I think like there are all these like parts of it that are just very, very good. But I do think like again, the core and like working with other founders who are like in the trenches with you, like manning the arena style thing is super great, yes.
What do you think is, if you had to point to one specific thing that it was the most helpful with?
Yeah, the founder cohort and the mentors, like absolutely.
The mentors?
Yeah.
And other founders. So being around people who are very experienced in being founders, basically.
Yes, 100%.
How many teams got in?
So I think my cohorts, we were, I want to say somewhere in the 14 to 16 number.
Okay.
I know the acceptance rate is like less than 1%.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it's it was like also like I think like every cohort is like all-time high number of applications, right?
Yeah, because everybody is applying.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that was it.
Nice. We talked a little bit off camera about your guys' monthly volume.
Yes.
Right now you're around 10 million.
Yeah.
And Jeremy was mentioning road to 100.
Yes.
What do you expect to happen, and how is that going to happen?
So we want to be there like in the next 1 year or thereabout, right? And I think for us, there are just like a bunch of like obvious low-hanging fruits that we want to like hyper execute on top of, right? So this is like, again, like the HashKey partnership is like a very good example of that, right? Where we have like users who are like pestering us for like this, right? We kind of have like virtual cards that we kind of have to like figure out, right? Like, so that's like another example of that. And then like there are a whole bunch of like new products that like we're building out that we think we've realized like, okay, there's still like a lot of like pain points with people having access to virtual accounts, people having access to, even like right now, like being able to like buy Bitcoin and feel safe about it, knowing where to start. So for us, right, like just positioning ourselves very effectively as the connection of like the everyday African to the global financial infrastructure is like the thing like we're really like going for there. And I think like we just have to literally like execute on like the low hanging fruits. So I think one, just getting all the different things that like users are asking us for today out of the road is like the super big thing. And like I think we just have like a super excellent team to be able to like figure this out, right? I think we've been very like intentional with like hiring and like also being super lucky also with hiring, right? So we have like very good like developers and like sales guys, and I think that like just helps us really like position well for being able to do this.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing. What are you looking forward to the most in the next couple of months?
Getting everything that is on our like plate out. So I think like a bunch of things that are on our plate are somewhat experimental also, where we see the problem, like we do spend a ridiculous amount of time like talking to users, like literally everybody in the community.
Which is super important, which I feel like a lot of companies don't do that.
Yeah. So I think even like our developers like talk to users, right? Like every single person, right? And like I kind of like make this point that you kind of start out with like a bunch of like intuition, right? So we're like, for instance, like the MVP of like even the business app that we built, we had a whole bunch of things that we were prioritizing, right? And like we spent some time like with users, right? And they were confused about what was going on. And like, oh yes, we are so stupid. Of course, this is confusing, right? And like what you need to do is you spend time with users and they reshape your intuition, right? Like they help you realize like all of the horrendous decisions you're making, because you take them for granted, right? And like you can kind of like refine a lot. And so I think what I'm most excited about, right, is all these different kinds of things that we're experimenting with, figuring out like what is correct, like what is wrong, and we need to iterate on, right? And like iterate on and iterate on until we get it really right. And like when we get there, we're like, oh, like what's next to go, and like figuring it out, right, and whatnot. And I kind of like in the famous words of Kobe, the job isn't finished yet, so we have so much to go. Yeah, it's the one.
True, true. Is there anything else that you want to put out there as a message, or anything that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think like I'm going to say like everyone should like watch out for like just the tremendous amount of potential and things that are going to happen on the African continent with like the next generation of like young people who are getting connected to the global financial system and getting excited about like crypto and AI and the different ways in which they can add value. I think where we're at very clearly like a seminal point, and like a lot of things are going to change. And I do think there's a lot of the reality of like what is useful about crypto and like what is functional that will be demonstrated by people using it on the continent.
Sure.
Right. And like we're going to learn so much about like user experiences and how to build products and like what works, what doesn't make sense. And like that keeps me going every day. That gets me super excited. That makes me proud and honored to be building.
Great, and we're honored to be building with you guys.
Thank you.
And for you guys to be some of our newest partners.
Yes. Yeah. So that I am super excited about also. I think this was like PJ, my co-founder. Like this was the thing. Like when we started like talking, it was like, oh, we absolutely have to like talk to the Aptos Labs guys. Like they're doing like all these different things, right? And so like this kind of how we got on like the journey with like working with you. And like it's just been super fabulous, right?
With you guys too. You both are incredible in terms of your energy.
Yeah.
Because you know, obviously, I work with a lot of founders, and there's stuff that you can tell about people.
Yeah.
And what I was telling Ash earlier today, I was like, both of them are so. I don't know. There's something about you guys that I can't explain. Like, you're very composed. Yeah. You're very consistent. Mm-hmm. You're very enthusiastic about what you're building, like all of these traits that you want in a founder, which is, you know, obviously makes it even less surprising that you got into both YC and Alliance. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm super excited to like be building this with PJ also. Yeah. So it's funny because before we got started, like we were talking now, like we're just like thinking about like our working chemistry, and we realized we had been speaking like every day for like 4 years about crypto, like literally every day, because we are like in all these different like crypto group chats where we're always like dropping thoughts and ideas and whatnot. Yeah. So that's also been like super good to see and like very, very nice. And so yeah, I think like just the entire experience, like working with you guys, talking to you guys, thinking through like a whole bunch of like the things also, right, and like the market, right. Has been super nice. And I think like one of the things I've also like really gotten to see has actually just been the adoption of like people like using Aptos like a lot, like in the app, right? Because so that has been incredibly like nice to see. I do think like there's going to be just like a lot of differentiation there and like interestingness there with respect to what people are just like able to do like in general, right? Like again, I do think these kinds of markets are like super fee sensitive. Like the kinds of things like you're building make it super perfect there. So
yeah,
I think
that's
like
why
we have a good.
That's why it was built.
Yes, absolutely.
Same philosophy, so.
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah.
Make it accessible, make it cheap.
Yeah.
Make it reliable.
Yeah, and a little bit of alpha. I'm in the Aptos office space, and like it looks really nice. You guys' office is incredible.
It is nice.
Yeah, if anyone ever comes to visit, they know what they're in for.
But you should come more often. You're not that far.
Yes, I will. Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Yeah,
we'll welcome you anytime.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time and being with me today.
Yes.
It's not the last time that we're gonna hear about you or from you, but it's the first time that we do.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.